I went on a solo hiking trip in these remote mountains, looking for some peace and quiet. The trail was tough, but the views were totally worth it. As the sun started to set, I found a small clearing to set up my camp for the night. The air got colder and the shadows grew longer, casting creepy shapes on the rocks. I lit a small fire and snuggled into my sleeping bag, feeling pretty good about my little adventure. The silence of the mountains was intense, only broken by the occasional rustle of leaves and distant animal sounds. Just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard this low, guttural growl. I sat up, trying to listen. The growl got louder, echoing off the mountains. It sounded like an animal, but also not quite right, like it was something from a nightmare. My heart started racing as I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the darkness. The beam of light cut through the night, but all I could see were trees and rocks. The growling continued, and now there was this heavy breathing sound, as if something was lurking just out of sight. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind or some animal, but the sounds were too deliberate. I decided to check it out, hoping to find a logical explanation. As I got closer, the growling and breathing got louder, almost deafening. Then, suddenly, the sound stopped, and everything went eerily silent. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck and spun around, but there was nothing there. Freaking out, I ran back to my campsite, my flashlight flickering like it was about to die. When I got back, my stuff was scattered everywhere, and my fire was out. The air felt unnaturally cold. I quickly packed up and decided to hike back down the mountain, even though it was pitch dark. As I made my way down the trail, I heard footsteps behind me, matching my pace. I turned around, but saw nothing. The footsteps kept getting closer and closer. I broke into a run, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Finally, I reached the base of the mountain and my car. I jumped in, locked the doors, and drove away as fast as I could. The growling and breathing still echo in my mind, a haunting reminder of that night alone in the mountains. The growling started off faint, like a low rumble that sent vibrations through the ground. It was the kind of sound that made your skin crawl, an instinctive signal that something wasn't right. I shone my flashlight towards the direction of the sound, but the beam was swallowed by the darkness of the dense forest. I felt exposed, every nerve on edge. I took a few cautious steps toward the sound, my breath hitching with each step. The growling grew louder, more intense, as if it was coming from all around me. I swung the flashlight in wide arcs, desperately trying to catch a glimpse of whatever was making that noise. The heavy breathing followed, raspy and close, like someone or something was right beside me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move. It was quick, darting behind the trees. I tried to follow it with the light, but it was too fast. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the sound stopped. The silence was deafening, more terrifying than the growls and breaths. I felt a chilling cold wash over me, making me shiver despite the layers of clothing. I turned to head back to my campsite, but every step felt like I was walking through molasses. My senses were heightened, every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs making me jump. When I finally made it back, the sight of my scattered belongings filled me with dread. Someone or something had been here. I quickly packed my things, my hands trembling. As I hiked down, the footsteps behind me were relentless, always just out of sight. I kept looking back, hoping to catch a glimpse of my pursuer, but there was nothing. The fear was suffocating. By the time I reached the base in my car, I was exhausted both mentally and physically. I locked the doors and sped away, not daring to look back. The mountain's eerie silence and the haunting sounds still linger in my mind, a bone-chilling reminder of that night. I haven't been able to shake the feeling that something was watching me, following me, even now. Driving from New York to California was a trip I had been looking forward to for a long time. I chose to take the scenic route instead of flying because I wanted to soak in the sights along the way. The journey was filled with beautiful landscapes and interesting stops, but by the time I reached San Diego, I was exhausted and ready to relax. When I arrived at the hotel I booked through Expedia, my excitement quickly faded. From the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The lobby was dimly lit, and there was an odd smell in the air. Still, I pushed my worries aside. I just needed a place to rest after a long drive. After checking in, I received my room key and made my way to my room, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that lingered. Once inside, I locked the door and secured the extra safety bar, a habit I had developed over years of traveling alone. Around 4 a.m., I was jolted awake by a loud noise that sent my heart racing. Someone was trying to get into my room. They managed to open the door slightly, but thankfully, the bar held it in place. My adrenaline kicked in as I quickly threw on some clothes and rushed to see what was happening. Peering through the peephole, I saw two men outside my door with their hands wedged in the gap. They were yelling crude comments like, "Come here, pretty girl," and other unsettling things that made my skin crawl. Panic surged through me as I grabbed my phone and called the front desk for help. When I explained what was going on, their response shocked me. "Oh, I didn't know you were still here." Feeling furious and scared, I packed up my belongings and headed down to confront the staff at the front desk. To my disbelief, the woman there told me she had no record of my reservation. Despite having proof of check-in and parking stickers on my car, she insisted that she had rented out my room for an entire month. It felt surreal and infuriating. After a frustrating back and forth where she refused to call her manager at 5 a.m., I decided to wait until they arrived at 9 a.m. As morning finally rolled around, I demanded a refund and insisted on speaking with a manager. After much persistence, I finally got my money back. The whole experience left me confused and angry. How could this hotel operate like this? It felt like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Looking back on that night, I'm grateful that I locked that bar on the door, because who knows how things could have turned out differently if I hadn't taken that precaution. This experience taught me an important lesson about staying alert while traveling. Even in places that seem safe or familiar, it's always wise to be cautious and prepared for anything unexpected. Despite this terrifying ordeal, I didn't let it ruin my trip. After checking out of that hotel as quickly as possible, I found another place nearby that felt much safer and more welcoming. The rest of my time in San Diego turned out to be enjoyable as I explored the beautiful beaches and vibrant neighborhoods, reminding me that sometimes even scary experiences can lead to better adventures down the road. My first international trip was to Seoul. I ended up at my hotel in a somewhat sketchy area, but I wasn't too nervous. The narrow streets were dimly lit, and the buildings around looked worn and aged. I checked in, and the guy at the front desk was super nice and very helpful. He had an easy smile and even looked pretty decent. He offered to come out front and have a cigarette with me so I wouldn't be alone. No weird vibes. At this point, I was exhausted, and my friend was supposed to meet up with me in the morning when his flight came in. So, I went to my room as it was late. I told the man at the front desk to let me know if anyone called because my phone didn't have minutes yet. Fast forward 3 hours, and I woke up, went downstairs for a smoke, and to get something to drink. This man had totally changed. His friendly demeanor was gone, replaced with something unsettling. His eyes had a cold, predatory glint that sent shivers down my spine. He told me my friend called and said he was no longer coming. He suggested I come to his place, have some wine, and he could show me around Seoul. Alarm bells went off in my head. Something didn't feel right. I politely declined and went back to my room, locking the door behind me. My heart was pounding, and I couldn't sleep, not knowing what to do next. I lay there, every noise amplified in the silence of the room. The creak of the building, the distant hum of the city, it all felt ominous. Suddenly, I heard my door knob start to rattle and turn. My pulse quickened. I was in a small room with no other exit. The door creaked open, and there he stood, the man from the front desk. I jumped off my bed and backed into a corner, trembling. I told him he shouldn't be in here, my voice shaky with fear. He ignored me, walking closer and grabbing the back of my head. He tried to kiss me, but I pushed him away. Enraged, he threw me against the door, saying, "I am a man. You are a woman. Just let it happen." My mind raced, trying to find a way out. His phone rang multiple times. The front desk was calling. A customer was waiting. He He growled in frustration and left, promising to come back. As soon as he was gone, I grabbed my things. I didn't want to be trapped in that room alone. I cautiously made my way downstairs. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard my friend's voice. He was speaking to the front desk guy, who was telling him I never arrived. My blood boiled. I stepped out from the shadows and yelled, "What the hell? I am right here." My friend's eyes widened in shock. I quickly explained everything that had happened. Without wasting another moment, we checked out of the hotel. The front desk guy tried to act innocent, but I wasn't having it. We left and found another place to stay. It was the scariest moment of my life, but I was safe, and that was all that mattered.